Hey YouTube, so question, does it matter what you do in your dreams? I mean, obviously, most dreams just sort of happen automatically. They're outside of your control. But sometimes you may well experience lucid dreams. You may well become aware that you are dreaming and you may gain control over your actions. I experience lucid dreams probably 3 or 4 times a year, at least from what I can remember of my dreams. Um, and and so, I think for most of us, when we experience a lucid dream, we find ourselves, in a sort of a world without any kind of constraint. It just doesn't matter what we do. If I want to pick up a gun and go out and massacre a bunch of passers-by, that's perfectly fine. Doesn't matter because it's just a dream. Um, so the question though is, well, what if the dream world is actually a real world and the dream characters are actually real people, people with minds like my own? Um, I mean, okay, now that might sound a bit strange, uh, but I mean, look, there's sort of there's a kind of precautionary principle that I would want to appeal to here. So, um, if I find myself in a lucid dream and I'm thinking, okay, I'm inclined to pick up a gun and go out and massacre some people. I'd like to experience that. Well, uh, I had better be very confident that the dream world is imaginary, right? Like I need to be very, very, very confident that that's the case. Um, and so the question is, how confident about that should I actually be? Because, of course, if the dream world is real, then going out and massacring all of the dream characters, I mean, that would be horrific, right? In fact, if dream worlds are real worlds, then there might be a fairly serious crisis occurring because most people will lucid dream at some point. I think something like 20% of people report lucid dreaming regularly. So it's something like 20% of people report lucid dreaming at least once a month. And for many of these people, um, when they lucid dream, they can just do whatever they want. Doesn't matter. They take it that it's fine because it's just imaginary. Um, so so I think the question then is, well, do we have a slam dunk case for the claim that dream worlds are just imaginary? Because if we don't have a slam dunk case for that, I mean, if there's some room to doubt that, if we have some credence, if we're even like 5% inclined to think that well, maybe the dream world is actually a real world populated with real people, um, then it seems like you actually should not be going around just doing whatever you want. You should act with the same sort of constraints that you do in waking life. Um, so, okay, so here's the suggestion then. The suggestion is that there's the kind of two world model. On the two world model, there's the world of waking life, and then when we go to sleep, we experience an alternative world and like another world, a dream world. But the dream world is another real world. Just as the world of waking life, we experience objects and other people, and those people have minds like ours. So in the dream world, we experience like real objects and real people with minds like ours. Um, so okay, what is the argument against this view? Do we have a slam dunk case against this view? So I guess probably the main reason why people would reject the two world model comes from a commitment to some sort of physicalism. At least this is, well, maybe not most people. I wouldn't suppose that most people are physicalists, but at least most philosophers, right? I think if you ask most philosophers, there's probably some sort of commitment to physicalism. And, I mean, there's different ways of justifying physicalism, but I suspect there'd probably be like an appeal to some sort of causal closure type argument. So, we'd say, well, look, all physical events have sufficient physical causes. All mental events have physical effects. mental events are going to have effects in terms of behavior of the body, and effects in terms of like brain events going on. And so, there's going to be sufficient physical causes for mental events. And importantly, with respect to dream experiences, well, dream experiences are mental events. And we can see that dream experiences are correlated with events in the brain. I mean, they are in fact on sort of standard kind of neuroscientific models. I think we would say that dream experiences are going to be caused by events going on in the brain. So you can see these patterns of brain activity, and then people then report certain dream experiences which are correlated with those. And I suppose the thought would be that in principle, we're going to be able to give a sufficient physical explanation of dream experiences. We're going to be able to give a complete explanation of dream experiences which appeals to events going on in the brain. Okay, so, I mean, obviously this sort of line is going to depend on our prior commitment to physicalism. Now, I don't want to get too deep into physicalism here because, I mean, I've already quite recently uploaded a couple of videos on physicalism. I guess I would just say, for the purpose of this video, I don't think there's anything like a slam dunk case in favour of physicalism. I think there are some pretty serious objections to physicalism. In fact, I think there's some serious questions about whether physicalism is even coherent. And the actual arguments in favour of physicalism strike me as needing quite, they leave a lot to be desired. Or at least I think there's a lot of room for objection to many of the standard arguments in favour of physicalism. So I'll link a couple of videos in the comments where I talk in more detail about some of these issues to do with physicalism. But I mean, so on the sort of two-world model, then, let's say that we accept. I mean, so one thing to say is we might well accept an alternative to physicalism like idealism. Now, from an idealist point of view, I suppose that describing this as a two-world model is actually maybe a bit misleading. Like, from an idealist point of view, we might just say, well, there are various experiential regularities, and those experiential regularities, they manifest in one kind of way in the waking world and another kind of way in the dream world. But it's not that there's like two separate parts of reality or two worlds. There's just, different parts of one world. So there's a world, and there's all these, so there's various experiential regularities, and just as in waking life we find that there are different parts of the same world. I can go to a rainforest or I can go to a city, and I'm going to find different regularities there. So it's the case that there are different sorts of regularities in waking life and when we're dreaming. But it's not like there's like two separate worlds, or at least there doesn't need to be two separate worlds. So if we are, so again, I mean, if we're rejecting physicalism, then that's one thing we could say. Alternatively, we might accept that there is a physical world, and then we might well say, okay, there's a physical world, and the physical world is causally closed. But there's also a dream world, and the physical world is correlated in some way with the dream world. So the thought would be, so here's the model then. So we have a physical world, and it's going to be true on this model that all physical events have sufficient physical causes. But so then mental events are going to be caused by physical events. So you have like the physical world which causes mental events. Then you have this dream world which is correlated with the physical world, and that's also like, I mean, maybe causing or correlated with mental events. The mental events will be epiphenomenal. So in other words, right, imagine a kind of epiphenomenal model, a model of epiphenomenalism, right? So we have a series of physical events, and the physical events are causing mental events. The mental events don't have any causal powers. So what I'm suggesting is that if you imagine like a series of physical events, that's the physical world, causing this series of mental events, well now the dream world is like it's also causing those mental events, and it's like kind of correlated with the physical world. So okay, that's just another way that you can think of this, if you're not signing up to physicalism. So the point is, for these purposes, there are alternatives to physicalism, and there are, I think, ways of making sense of the idea that the dream world is a real world. And I don't think there's a slam dunk case for physicalism. So okay, what else might we say? What else could we say against the view that dream worlds are real? Well, one thought might be that dream worlds tend to lack the sort of continuity and coherence that we find in waking life. So the thought is that the best explanation for the kind of continuity of our experience that we have in waking life is that, you know, there is a real world out there, which is causing our experiences. So, for example, you know, I'm looking at a table right now with a computer on it, and I can close my eyes, and when I open them, the table and the computer are still there. You know, so there's this, yeah, there is a continuity and coherence to my experiences, and that is best explained by postulating an external world which is causing those experiences. So, and whereas with dream worlds, you know, this sort of continuity breaks down, and so it's, you know, it's not best explained that way. I think that, I mean, I don't find this very convincing though, because it seems to me, first of all, that there actually is plenty of continuity and coherence in dream worlds. I mean, dream worlds don't have quite the same sort of continuity and coherence that waking life does. But I mean, actually, I've had plenty of dreams where, you know, I find myself sitting at a desk, and, you know, I might close my eyes and open them, and then I see the same thing. You know, I can, the table's still there, the computer's still there. Of course, yes, other things will have changed, but, you know, things change in the waking world as well. Um, I, I find that as well. I mean, for me, I often revisit the same sorts of places in dream worlds. So I will have a dream where I'm, you know, in this room, and then I can have another, you know, like the next night I go to sleep and I'm dreaming that I'm in this room again. So there seems to me to be plenty of continuity and coherence in dreams. Additionally, I think that if we think about waking life, we find you're going to find that there's similarly a lot of contexts where continuity and coherence kind of breaks down, or at least reduces. So if you go to a rainforest, for instance, well, a lot of what's happening there is just sort of chaotic. Like there aren't the, you know, the kind of like regularities that you're going to be familiar with, and you know, that are going to structure your everyday experience. If you go somewhere like a rainforest, you know, there just aren't the same sort of regularities there. I think actually a lot of the continuity and coherence in our lives is actually constructed by us. So I mean, sometimes it's like a literal construction. Like we construct buildings and things, and then sometimes it's kind of more abstract. Like we have constructed a really precise notion of time. You know, so I can sort of say, okay, well, I'm going to do such and such at 10 o'clock, and then like being able to sort of have this regular passage of time, where like the day is organized into these structured elements. I mean, that's something that that has required like an intentional constructive process on our part. I think it's worth noting that it's maybe not so surprising that that the dream world is less coherent, because people in dream worlds aren't really constructing things. People in dream worlds tend to act just automatically. I'm assuming that, at least from my own experience, right? Like the vast majority of my dreams, I'm not really I mean, I'm not really in control. I'm not thinking critically. I'm not reflective. Yes, occasionally I have lucid dreams, but most of the time I just sort of act automatically. So, if that's the case for other people in dream worlds, then there's just going to be much less opportunity to construct order in the way that we have in waking life. Um, okay, so I don't think the appeal to continuity or coherence works. Another thought would be there's like an objection from simplicity, right? So if I'm saying that, okay, I have this model, this two-world model, where there's a physical world and a dream world, or waking world and a dream world. Well, it's just simpler to have a one-world model. The one-world model says, look, there's the waking world, and then there's sometimes there's a bunch of processes that happen in the waking world that cause these dream experiences, but the dream experiences, they're not veridical. They're just hallucinatory or something. That is a simpler explanation because it's just postulating one world. I mean, I think that so in general, I'm pretty skeptical that simplicity is truth tracking. But I think in this context, so I think in this context, one issue here is going to be that, well, even if we grant that simplicity is truth tracking, it's not clear that we necessarily have to conceive of this in terms of literally two worlds. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, there is this like alternative idealist model where really there's just like two parts of one world, and it's not obvious to me that that introduces any additional complex. It's not obvious to me that that violates Occam's razor, let's say, any more than would supposing that cities and rainforests are both real. So so that's one issue. Another issue is going to be, well, wouldn't it be even simpler to just deny that there's even one world? I mean, why not just? I mean, if you're going to appeal to simplicity, why not just go all the way and say, well, actually, it's just all an illusion. There isn't even a single world. There's like just your own experiences. Okay, that's one thing we might be able to say. But I think even if it is the case that simplicity favors the view that there's just the waking world, I don't think it favors it strongly enough to make a slam dunk case against the reality of dream worlds. And again, that's sort of what we need, right? Like the point is that we need to be very, very, very confident that dream worlds are not real. And I just can't see any way that a simplicity argument, for me, I can't see any way a simplicity argument is going to move me to that degree of confidence. Maybe I could sign up to the idea that, oh, okay, well, like this appeal to simplicity sort of pushes my credence in the reality of the dream world down, but it's not going to make me super confident that the dream world is not real. I don't know, that doesn't work for me. Another point we might make is we might appeal to the fact that there are like bodily sources of dreaming. So one famous example that was this is an example that at least was used by the ancient Greeks, was they pointed out that a lot of people experience flying in dreams, and they had this thought that the reason why people experience flying in dreams is because we usually sleep lying down. And when you're lying down, your feet are not on the floor, and your body is like in a straight, like horizontal position. So that then leads to this dream experience. Like the brain then kind of constructs this dream experience of flying, where your feet aren't on the floor and your body's in a horizontal position. Similarly, you can think about how like it's often the case that noises in the waking world will bleed into the dream world. Or certain feelings, like if it's cold in the waking world, you might feel cold in the dream world. So in some sense, the dream world is dependent on the waking world. And maybe that suggests that the dream world is not real. And as well, importantly, I suppose, the dream world seems kind of fragile, or it's you can be very easily pulled out of the dream world. Like if there's a loud bang in the waking world, you just wake up, and you're wrenched out of the dream world immediately. So again, I mean, this doesn't strike me as that convincing. Um, so yes, it's true that the waking world sort of intrudes upon the dream world, but then I don't. I mean, if on the two world model, that's I don't even know why that would be necessarily surprising, right? So on the two world model, we are just human beings are just such that they kind of exist in these two worlds at different times. Given that we shift from one world to another, it's maybe not surprising that there are ways that these worlds maybe intrude on each other. So yes, it is true that we can be wrenched out of the dream world very quickly. On the other hand, it's also true that we are sometimes pulled into the dream world, like when you feel really, really tired and you just can't keep your eyes open anymore. And I've sometimes had the experience of like being sort of awake, kind of very tired, and then my mind will, like I get like flashes of images that are kind of dreams, or maybe they're like more like hypnagogic hallucinations. They're sort of like dreams. So there seem to be cases where the dream world like intrudes upon the waking world. But I mean, more generally, it's okay. So we know that there are these correlations between the waking world and the dream world, right? Like we already know that. We know that brain events are correlated with dream experiences. So like that's the case. So there is a kind of there's some sort of regularity or correlation between the dream world and the waking world. And like that may be there's an explanatory question there. Like why is it the case that there are these correlations, right? Why would that happen? But like once you have those sorts of correlations in place, it's then not that surprising, I think, that okay, well, in the same way that when I have dream experiences, this is correlated with certain brain events. It's not surprising to me that there would then be say events in the external world like noises and stuff that could then be correlated with dream things going on in my dream experiences. So yeah, again, that doesn't really strike me as a slam dunk case against the reality of dream worlds. A final point is that there are alternative models of what's actually going on in dreams. So there's this interesting suggestion from a philosopher called Jonathan Ichikawa, that dreams do not have perceptual content, but they are instead sort of like imagining things. So I suppose the standard model of dreams is that when we dream, we are, if I like dream that I'm sitting at my desk talking at my computer, then my visual experiences will be exactly as if I was actually sitting at the desk talking to my computer. So like the visual appearance of a computer in a dream is identical to the visual appearance of a computer in waking life. Now on Jonathan Ichikawa's model, dreaming is more like imagination, right? So when I dream that I'm sitting talking to a computer, it's more like I'm just imagining talking to a computer. And so I've got a video actually where I talk about this model. I'll again link that in the comments. All I would say about this is I just don't think this is. I mean, this just doesn't. I don't find this a very plausible account of my own experiences. This is kind of interesting actually because I've had lucid dreams. All my life, as far as I know, since I was a kid, I have experienced lucid dreams. And when I was a kid, I always used to be like stunned by by just how like real the dream world felt. I know that like so I've had this experience of becoming lucid and just being struck by how vivid and detailed and how coherent actually the experience of the dream world seemed. Like it wasn't just. I remember thinking like it's not just visuals. Like, so first of all, I can remember looking at, for instance, the sky and seeing the kind of gradual color change in the sky and the details of the clouds. And then I remember also like hearing things and feeling wind. And so it was like, it wasn't just visual, it was the whole kind of sensory package was there. And, you know, I was struck by this. And so I had this experience a few more times when I would have lucid dreams. And then I read this article by Jonathan Ichikawa, and since reading that article for a few years afterwards, whenever I would have lucid dreams, there was no perceptual content. It was just like imagination, um, and that was very puzzling to me. It was like, wait a minute, I've had lucid dreams before. I was sure that they were, you know, that they were like they were perceptual. Um, but now I'm having lucid dreams and they seem to be just like imaginings. Like, what? But then, even more puzzling, later I started getting perceptual lucid dreams again. And these days, whenever I have lucid dreams, they are vivid and perceptual. So I'm just relaying this story. This doesn't really have so much to do with the broader point, but I mean, it's like it's very puzzling to me. It's like, wait, what? How? Why would that happen? Like, what the hell's going on there? I mean, um, is it the case that my dreams, like the nature of my dreams, changed in response to reading that article? Like, how on earth would that happen? What possible mechanism is there by which, you know, reading a philosophy article would change the character of my dreams? Or it may just be that I'm, you know, remembering my dreams differently. So, I mean, I guess the important point is, look, the perceptual model of dreaming is, at the very least, very controversial. And you know, it's something that a lot of people are going to find that to be contrary to how they remember their own experiences of dreaming. And I suppose, you know, I mean, like, if you're in the moment where you're actually, if you are actually in a lucid dream, if you realize, like, oh, right now this is a dream, well, in that moment at least, you will know whether it's perceptual or just an imagination. And, you know, if it is perceptual, if it has the character of perception, then then I think this point about the precautionary principle is going to kick in. Like, you need to be very confident that it's not a real world. And what I want to say then is, it just seems to me like there isn't a slam dunk case against dream worlds being real worlds and dream characters being real people. And if there isn't a slam dunk case against that, then you should treat dream characters kindly. And that's what I wanted to say.